Hello and welcome to a new video on the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about socializing, and more in particular a few different areas of socializing. Before this video does begin, I am not an expert obviously within this field. This is just limited knowledge of my own and just things that have worked for me in my experiences from just trying to be better at socializing and how it's impacted my life. So what we're going to be talking about is 1, why we need to socialize, 2, what is hindering us from doing so, and 3, how to kind of be better at doing so and be better at socializing itself. So yeah, if that interests you, let's jump in. So firstly, we need to actually socialize, mainly because it's deeply rooted within just humans as a whole. Generally speaking, you have your first little section, which is kind of like your first little tribe, which will be, for example, your friends or family. Once you've kind of got that under wraps to a decent degree, generally speaking, you end up kind of wanting to improve your environment around you, which then leads to your community. And then other communities will form around your community, which then eventually leads to a country. So yeah, tribalism itself just kind of stems from socialization. Pretty much in terms of our actual aspects of why we socialize. 1, we're just deeply social creatures, even though a lot of people are classed as introverted, so they do not gain their energy particularly from social interactions. We end up, in terms of needing socialization, to just either 1, make us a little bit more happier generally. For example, for myself, it does help me to socialize every now and again to at least keep my mental health to a decent degree and not be ruined by the fact that I'm just not talking to anyone at all. So why is it in particular that we generally socialize? So to begin with, you've got, obviously, everyone wants to have friends. You need to have someone to talk to, or at least people to talk to, because when it is you by yourself, you'll start telling yourself things that are actually lies, and it can get extremely dangerous and extremely boring very quickly. Boring is normally the first thing that happens from not being socialized that much, but the one that does end up hitting very quickly eventually is dangerous thoughts. This can be anything from basically thoughts about your own self, but also thoughts about other things in the world. And because you're not taking in anyone else's opinion, and nobody else's opinion is grounding you in reality of any sort, you can end up kind of getting lost in your own mind instead of having different viewpoints to follow. Other people, when it comes to socializing, are kind of there for everyone to keep each other kind of happy from time to time, but I'd say the main cause of socializing is keeping each other grounded in a form of reality. There is people who are out of the norm for that, in terms of they do not ground themselves properly within reality itself, and they can either be extremely pessimistic or extremely optimistic. But in terms of people in general, when we socialize, we make each other happier, but also it allows us to actually be seated in some form of reality. Before I talk about what holds us back for socializing, I want to just say, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like and subscribing to the channel if you do like this sort of content. I upload whatever I want on Wednesdays, and gaming content primarily every single Friday, with a game critique every single month. So yeah, if that is something that interests you and you want to just stick around for me or the videos themselves, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe. So yeah, let's get on with the video. So what is holding us back from socializing? Well, I'd say first thing in general anyway, pretty quickly, that you can answer to that is online chatting, or just forms of online connection. That's obviously a pretty easy one to just go, oh yep, that's probably why we're not socializing as much, because really, what's the point if you can stay in the comfort of your own home, talk to someone that way, instead of having to leave your house, go out into the cold, for example, or go out just in general, make yourself feel uncomfortable in a social setting, when you could just do it from home and talk to someone you want to talk to there and then. But the primary issue that we find with that is obviously about 80% of communication, roughly, is done by body language, and that basically means that when you're talking to someone, you do not actually comprehend everything that's going through their mind when they're talking to you. A great example of this for me, I generally struggle with understanding how people are feeling when they're talking to me, and I also struggle to actually feel a load of empathy towards people. So because of that, I would probably nail that down to the fact that when I was younger, between the ages of basically 9 and 14, I stayed indoors most of my time. I'd play Xbox, talk to people online, so I'm only getting about 15% of the overall actual communication you get from talking to people. I didn't know when, for example, if someone said something, if it was done in a, let's say, negative context, or if it was meant in a good way. So it always got very complicated, just because you can't actually tell by how they look, how they sound, how they're standing, nothing like that, their eyes, nothing. So because of that, you lose out on a lot of human interaction that you would pick up on if you weren't in those situations, which a lot of kids today will be growing up on. Main thing really is that I'm part of the generation that really grew up with all of this sort of thing. I do not remember a time really where a lot of technology wasn't around. And I can basically go back and think to myself, okay, well, I can still remember when things like flip phones were starting, and there was VHS tapes and that sort of thing. But in terms of just general technology that we have today, most of it that we have today, I can probably remember back when I was a child, at least the early stages of it. So I would definitely say that in terms of how I've been brought up, I wouldn't take anything away from my actual upbringing itself, but because of the lack of socializing when I was in like my teen years, for example, did make me struggle when I was first getting on into actual more adult life. But other things did help me with that, and that's something that I will get into in a moment. The other thing that kind of stops us from socializing itself is people's judgments and overall standards in society today. When it comes to it, a lot of us, when we leave the house, we have to kind of hold back who you truly are. Most people do. You kind of put on a facade of who you actually are to impress either other people or at least come across as an agreeable person that someone would want to actually have a conversation with. And this isn't something that's pretty much like only down to one person or one type of people. Pretty much everyone does this, and it's primarily because your general state, how you are normally, probably isn't overly socially acceptable, so you kind of have to make adjustments overall to kind of compensate for the fact that you are not fully socially acceptable. Then you do get down the route of, you do eventually kind of become more socialized, and with that you'll kind of become, generally speaking, more socially acceptable. You'll still have your little issues overall, not necessarily issues, but just states of opinions and that sort of thing that people may disagree with. And because of that, you end up hiding away a lot of how you are to people, and you kind of get scared to have conversation with people or in general socialize because the standards are so high and you're afraid of being judged. But the primary thing for that is just remember, everyone gets judged. Judging itself is just making a judgment on first sight, especially in a social setting, so expect that to happen no matter what. It's a very infamous thing where the idea of basically the first 4 seconds, someone has probably already made up their mind about you, what type of person you are, just based off how you look. And then it's normally around about that first 10-second mark where someone will make their judgment overall and have an idea in their head about how you act. And this is something that, for example, if you end up going into the line of sales, you will probably learn just by having to learn different techniques of how to sell, because this is pretty much imprinted into, okay, dress well and come across well in your first minute of talking to someone, because if you don't, the entire sale can go down the window, which does lead me into what actually helped me personally and could help you with getting better at socializing and being more sociable. So for me, working was pretty much the main thing that helped me. I started working at a retail company that I still work for now, and I've been working for them since I was 16. I'm 19 now, I'm coming up to 20. I would say that I've now been with them for just over 3 years, but in terms of the actual scale of how much it helped me socialize, I would probably say before I started, I could hardly ever even hold a conversation with most people. I generally do not speak to a lot of people that aren't outside of my social circle, and a lot of people could probably agree with me in terms of they just don't talk to many people that aren't in their main social circle. And because of that, I don't end up wanting to have conversations with most people. And when you're having to be forced into a setting where you're talking to many different people, you do get better over time, and you kind of get better at, in terms of lying on the spot, I would probably say. Not necessarily lying, but being able to think on the spot of how to communicate with people in an effective way that won't hinder how you come across to people. And my primary thing, I'd say, if you are looking to kind of start in developing your social engineering overall, I'd probably say go get a job in retail. If you don't have one already anyway. So if you do have a job, or if you don't have a job, go get a job probably in like retail, in customer services or sales, and you'll probably get very quickly decent at talking to people. That is the main other thing, is that this all takes practice. You can't just expect to watch a video and just get better at socializing. There's a lot of videos out there. For example, the channel Charisma on Command does talk about this a lot, and it's kind of the practice of everything takes time. People are not just who they are overnight. It does take a lot of time to be a lot more charismatic, be a lot more charming, everything like that. To have a conversation properly and sit down and be sociable is something that you have to work on. It isn't something that's just going to happen straight away. So yeah, pretty much say yes to more things when in a social setting. If your friends ask you to go do something, probably say yes, unless you do have other things that you have to do. If your other solution is I'm just going to stay at home and play games, Well, yes, you can do that. I've done that many times, so I stay at home and instead of me and my friend going out, we'll end up just playing games, which can end up being really good, but at the same time, you don't have that social interaction and happiness feeling, I'll probably say, or at least rush of endorphins that you get from a general social setting. For me, the beginning stages of, for example, with my friends, I would do walks with my friends and we would just kind of talk about life itself. It meant that I got to learn more about my friends in a deeper level, but also we just got to a point where we're able to communicate about most things, and because of those walks, it's the case of you are going out and doing something, you're doing something that you are meant to do. Human beings weren't meant to be inside rooms all day, looking at screens all day. I do that a lot, especially now, but in terms of what you're meant to be doing, you are meant to be more outside, you are supposed to be socializing to keep your happiness up to a good degree. So yeah, try and do more things that are outside of your comfort zone to a degree. Obviously, you have zones, your comfort zone, then kind of your medium outer layer where it would be like, okay, I can maybe go do this, but it's not completely making me socially anxious. So yeah, basically say yes to more things, probably go get a job if you do not have one to help with your socializing. And then third thing is just keep making sure that you are aware that it does take a lot of time. So yeah, with that all being said, hope you guys did enjoy this video. Like I said earlier, I upload one gaming critique video a month, and that's normally at the end of the month. So if that is something you are interested in, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content in the future. I upload whatever I want on Wednesdays and gaming videos every Friday. So yeah, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.